I just watched what happened to Shedeur Sanders in the Cleveland Browns' third and final preseason game. And I'm outraged, I'm sickened, and I'm saddened. By the way, Shedeur continues to be treated in the National Football League.
National talent? Then who is? And how are we measuring it? Because we can't sit there and go, because of the way the first start on the road.
There's very few of them. I think there's less than what you think. I think John Elway was a generational talent. I think Patrick Mahomes is a generational talent. I don't think Tom Brady, I don't think Drew Brees, I don't think Peyton Manning are generational talents. I think Andrew Luck ended up being a generational talent. I don't think there's a ton of them out there.
But so then what? Then how does one, in your eyes, be a generational talent? Because there's not a lot of difference.
What's up, guys? Welcome back. We've got to talk about what happened on Sunday night, because what went down with the Cleveland Browns wasn't just a loss. It was a detonation. Forget the scoreboard for a minute. The head coach, Kevin Stefanski, and the front office executed one of the most baffling, frustrating, and frankly catastrophic acts of self-sabotage the National Football League has seen in years. This wasn't losing a game. It was declaring war on their own fans, torching their network partners, and setting fire to their entire season's revenue model in one fell swoop. The numbers are in, and they don't just look bad, they look like an apocalypse. This is a 5-alarm organizational fire, and we're gonna break down every layer of this disaster. Here's the hook. The moment it was confirmed that the dynamic generational talent, the future of the franchise, Shedeur Sanders, was stapled to the bench again in favor of the painfully predictable Joe Flacco, a digital earthquake hit the NFL. Viewers didn't just change the channel, they staged a full-scale mutiny. This wasn't a ratings dip, it was a 40% freefall, a collapse so severe it sent seismic shockwaves through the league office and network boardrooms. Today, we're not just dissecting a loss, we're analyzing a franchise in full-blown crisis, a coach on the hottest seat in sports, and a viewership rebellion that could change the business of football forever. Let's start by peeling back the layers of this unmitigated disaster, because the data being reported is absolutely devastating. The initial tune-in numbers for the Browns versus Lions primetime matchup were respectable, even promising. Fans across the nation, and I mean the nation, not just Cleveland, logged in, turned on their televisions, and gathered at watch parties with a singular, unspoken expectation. They wanted to see Shedeur Sanders. They were craving that cannon arm, that uncanny pocket presence, the magnetic playmaking ability that turns a routine Sunday night game into appointment television. The NFL, at its core, is an entertainment product, and Shedeur Sanders is pure, unadulterated, must-see entertainment. But then the broadcast began. The starting lineups were announced, and as Joe Flacco, a quarterback whose primary function seems to be managing a game into a state of suspended animation, trotted onto the field for the opening possession, the digital ground beneath the NFL's feet gave way. It was an instantaneous, visceral rejection. According to sources with direct knowledge of the broadcast metrics, and these are internal, high-level metrics, the viewership didn't just dip, it plunged. A staggering 40% of the audience vanished in a matter of minutes. This wasn't a slow bleed, it was a catastrophic hemorrhage. Social media platforms instantly became the command center for this viewer rebellion. The trending algorithms on X, formerly Twitter, couldn't keep up with the sheer volume of outrage. Hashtags like Play Shedeur, Fire Stefanski, and the brutally simple No Shedeur, no watch didn't just trend, they dominated the entire digital conversation, suffocating any actual discussion about the game itself. Instagram stories were flooded with videos of televisions being physically turned off and disconnected. TikTok creators, sensing a viral moment, began posting clips of themselves deleting their streaming apps mid-broadcast, racking up millions upon millions of views. The message was not just clear, it was a deafening roar. One broadcast executive, speaking on the absolute condition of anonymity for fear of professional reprisal, summarized the bloodbath perfectly. They said, and I quote, "When Shedeur is not playing, people simply don't care. We're not discussing a marginal ratings decline here. We're witnessing a complete viewer exodus, the likes of which are unprecedented in modern broadcasting." Think about the gravity of that statement. An entire segment of the audience, a massive 40% chunk, deemed the product unwatchable without one specific player on the field. Inside the network, the panic was palpable. Another high-level analyst was reportedly overheard during an emergency internal meeting stating, "The Browns aren't just benching their franchise quarterback, they're benching our entire Sunday night revenue model." Let that sink in. This decision transcended a simple football strategy. It became an economic catastrophe unfolding in real time, affecting multiple billion-dollar industries simultaneously. The NFL has built a global empire on the bedrock of consistent viewership, predictable audience engagement, and the reliable advertising revenue that follows. On Sunday night, the Cleveland Browns took a sledgehammer to that very foundation. When a marquee matchup featuring two playoff contenders loses almost half its audience before the end of the first quarter, every network executive, every league official, and every single franchise owner in the NFL sits up and pays immediate, terrified attention. But this is where the story intensifies. It moves from mere fan frustration to something far more organized and deliberate. The social media backlash wasn't just a collection of angry tweets. It was a coordinated campaign. Fans began posting screenshots documenting the exact moment they logged off, creating a digital trail of the mass exodus. Some went even further, demanding full refunds for their NFL Sunday ticket subscriptions, arguing the league was engaging in a form of bait and switch by promoting a team with a superstar they refused to play. Others began organizing widespread boycotts, threatening to disengage from all Browns-related content, games, merchandise, social media, until Sanders was reinstated as the starter. The discourse turned personal and hostile. Kevin Stefanski became the primary target. His competence, his decision-making, his very future were questioned in millions of posts. One viral tweet, which accumulated an astonishing 3 million impressions in under 2 hours, summed up the sentiment with brutal efficiency. The Browns without Shedeur are unwatchable. We're done until the Turfeer the 12 is back on the field. This isn't football, it's organizational malpractice. Another post that was shared tens of thousands of times read, "Just canceled my Game Pass subscription. I'm not spending $1 more to watch Joe Flacco manage a game into oblivion while the most exciting player in a generation sits helplessly on the sidelines." These weren't isolated hot takes. They were the unified voice of a betrayed audience. And here's the twist that nobody, not even the most cynical observers, could have anticipated. This wasn't just the so-called bandwagon fans, the new followers drawn in by Sanders' celebrity and talent. The exodus included the diehards, traditional Cleveland supporters, the lifelong, long-suffering Browns fans who have endured decades of unimaginable disappointment joined the rebellion. This is the core audience, the bedrock foundation of the franchise that has maintained its loyalty through countless quarterback disasters, coaching carousels, and front office failures. Their departure signals something far more profound and troubling than typical fan frustration. It signals a breaking point. Sources have confirmed that season ticket holders began listing their seats for future games on secondary markets during the first half. Local sports bars in Ohio reported the unthinkable. Customers were requesting the channel be changed during a Browns broadcast. This represents an unprecedented level of franchise abandonment. This is the fan base, the lifeblood of the organization, essentially filing for divorce in a very public and humiliating fashion. Now, let's talk about the game itself, because the on-field product was the perfect disastrous complement to the viewership collapse. Flacco struggled mightily, just as everyone predicted he would, against Detroit's aggressive and talented defensive scheme. His approach was conservative to the point of parody. The playbook seemed to consist of 3 pages: handoff, check down pass for 2 yards, and punt. The results were painfully predictable: 3 and outs, stalled drives that settled for field goal attempts, and punts that repeatedly pinned the Browns deep in their own territory. Meanwhile, on the other side of the ball, the Lions' offense was everything the Browns was not: explosive, dynamic, and entertaining. They dominated the time of possession, surgically exploiting a demoralized and exhausted Cleveland defense. They built an insurmountable lead before the second quarter was even over. The contrast was so stark, it was almost cruel. Detroit's quarterback was delivering explosive highlight reel moments. Joe Flacco was managing handoffs and avoiding risks so obsessively it felt like his primary goal was not to win, but simply not to make a catastrophic mistake. By the third quarter, the outcome was a foregone conclusion. The Lions were cruising comfortably while the Browns' offense was sputtering in helpless futility. The viewership metrics reflected this non-existent competition. The numbers didn't just stay low, they showed a continuous, steady decline throughout the entire second half. But here's the truly terrifying part for the NFL. People weren't just switching channels to find a more competitive game. According to inside sources, they simply stopped watching football entirely. Competing streaming services like Netflix saw an unusual Sunday evening spike in viewership. YouTube engagement increased dramatically. The NFL didn't just lose its audience to a competitor, it lost them to complete and utter disengagement. Stefanski's decision didn't just make the Browns unwatchable, it made people turn off football altogether. As expected, Kevin Stefanski's post-game press conference was an instant and unmitigated disaster. The air was thick with tension as reporters, armed with the knowledge of the ratings catastrophe, went on the attack. When questioned directly about his decision to bench Sanders, even as the game and the season spiraled out of control, Stefanski's response was a masterclass in tone-deaf corporate speak. Joe gives us the best opportunity of winning, he stated mechanically, his face a blank mask of defiance. The room practically erupted, one journalist refusing to accept the canned response asked directly, "Coach, your team's viewership collapsed by 40% today. Fans are online demanding refunds and organizing boycotts. How do you respond to the fact that your decisions are actively driving away your own audience?" Stefanski deflected, his discomfort visible to everyone. He mumbled about internal evaluations and competitive decisions, but his answers were hollow and unconvincing. His authority, already hanging by a thread, was visibly crumbling under the bright lights of national scrutiny. The fallout was immediate. ESPN's Sunday Night Countdown dedicated an entire segment to analyzing the unprecedented nature of the situation. Veteran analysts, men who have seen it all, debated whether Stefanski could even survive the season. One respected commentator stated it bluntly, "Kevin's not just losing games anymore, he's costing the league money, and that is the one unforgivable sin in the modern NFL." Another analyst added, "Front offices can tolerate competitive struggles. They can handle a losing streak. They absolutely do not tolerate ratings disasters that affect revenue sharing, broadcast negotiations, and multi-billion-dollar sponsor commitments. Stefanski is playing with fire, and the entire league is about to get burned." This is where the complications multiply exponentially. According to multiple sources familiar with the conversations, league executives in New York convened for emergency discussions on Monday morning. The commissioner's office is said to have expressed serious concerns regarding the Browns' handling of the Sanders situation. We must remember, the NFL operates as an entertainment business first and a competitive sports league second. When the decisions of one franchise begin to negatively impact league-wide viewership metrics and threaten the financial health of the collective, intervention becomes not just possible, but inevitable. While the league office will always maintain a public stance of neutrality regarding individual team personnel decisions, the private pressure being applied behind the scenes is said to be intensifying dramatically. The network partners in particular are furious. They have invested billions of dollars to secure broadcast rights, all based on the anticipation of consistent, massive audience engagement. Shedeur Sanders was seen as a ratings goldmine, a generational talent with a crossover appeal that attracts demographics typically disengaged from traditional football broadcasts. His benching doesn't just hurt the Cleveland local market, it damages national viewership patterns, throws primetime scheduling decisions into chaos, and complicates advertising rate negotiations for the entire league. Sources claim that multiple network executives have already contacted the league office, expressing their extreme frustration, demanding explanations, and even suggesting potential scheduling adjustments to minimize the Browns' future national television appearances. They are, in effect, trying to quarantine the Browns to prevent the ratings virus from spreading. And don't for a second overlook the sponsor implications. Major brands have invested heavily to connect their products with Shedeur Sanders' incredible marketability. His absence from the field directly impacts their endorsement value, throws commercial production schedules into disarray, and neutralizes activation strategies designed to target younger, more engaged consumers. One high-level marketing executive, speaking confidentially, stated, "Shedeur drives engagement metrics we haven't witnessed since the early years of Patrick Mahomes. When he's benched, our entire multi-million-dollar campaign strategy requires a complete and immediate reevaluation." Another brand representative reportedly expressed grave concerns during an internal meeting, saying, "We are paying premium rates for Browns ad inventory because we were expecting Sanders' star power. Instead, we're now associated with organizational dysfunction, a fan rebellion, rebellion, and catastrophically declining viewership. This is unacceptable. Now, let's step inside the locker room, because the players are not blind. They recognize the implications immediately. Veterans understand that television revenue funds the salary cap, which in turn determines contract values and influences the entire free agency market. When the Browns make decisions that crater viewership and affect league-wide economics, every player throughout the NFL pays attention. Sources suggest that several key Cleveland veterans are privately questioning the coaching staff's stubborn and seemingly illogical stance. One offensive lineman allegedly stated during a closed-door, players-only meeting, "We're not just losing games anymore, guys. We're losing fans, we're losing money, and we're losing credibility as a franchise. How long are we supposed to let this continue?" The defensive players are reportedly expressing their frustrations in a different way. They recognize that Sanders' absence directly impacts the offense's ability to produce, which forces the defense onto the field for excessive periods and creates impossible competitive situations. One defensive captain supposedly told local reporters, "We prepare all week expecting to be in a competitive game. Instead, the offense can't sustain a drive to save their lives. We're completely gassed by the third quarter. The outcomes feel predetermined before kickoff." These comments, while diplomatically phrased for the media, reveal a deep organizational fracture that is intensifying with each passing week. Amidst this swirling vortex of chaos, Shedeur Sanders himself has maintained a remarkable level of professionalism. Sources close to the quarterback describe his approach as methodical, focused, and unshakable. He continues to arrive early, participate fully in every practice, and support his teammates publicly, carefully avoiding any media controversies. And yet his demeanor has reportedly shifted since Sunday's benching. People familiar with the situation suggest a visible frustration has begun to emerge. Television cameras captured several moments showing Sanders on the sideline shaking his head in disbelief, gesturing toward the field, and engaging in intense discussions with offensive coordinators. His body language communicated a powerful message that his words could not express publicly. What are we doing? Behind the scenes, Sanders' representation is reportedly exploring all of their options. While a trade request remains unlikely given his rookie contract status, conversations regarding the franchise's long-term commitment and developmental plan are intensifying. One prominent agent familiar with these types of situations stated, "Organizations reveal their true priorities through their actions, not their words." Cleveland is sending a very clear and very troubling message about how they truly value Shedeur. That information will absolutely guide all future decisions. Another source suggested that Sanders' camp is monitoring the situation with extreme prejudice, evaluating whether Cleveland can provide the optimal developmental environment, competitive opportunity, and organizational stability necessary to support his meteoric career trajectory. The answer at present appears to be a resounding no. And here is what truly electrifies this narrative. The consequences are multiplying far beyond the immediate circumstances. Future draft classes are watching Cleveland's dysfunction unfold. Elite quarterback prospects and their agents will now potentially avoid the Browns during the pre-draft process, viewing the organization as a career graveyard. Top-tier free agents will recognize the organizational instability, question the competence of the front office, and either demand a massive dysfunction tax in their compensation or simply refuse to even consider offers from Cleveland. The franchise's reputation, once thought to be on the rise, is being irreparably damaged by the gross mishandling of its most valuable asset. Recovering from this self-inflicted debacle will require years of rebuilding credibility, demonstrating stability, and proving a genuine commitment to intelligent player development. Kevin Stefanski's position is deteriorating at an astonishing rate. His authority has been publicly undermined, his decisions are being universally questioned, and his future is now indefinitely uncertain. Sources suggest that team ownership is already conducting a comprehensive evaluation examining not just coaching performance, but the entire organizational alignment and competitive outcomes. While public statements continue to express lukewarm support, private conversations are reportedly exploring contingency plans, potential replacements, and the optimal timing for a change. Stefanski must understand the professional reality. Coaches can survive losing seasons, but they cannot survive when they are losing games, losing fans, losing money, and losing the locker room all at the same time. His runway has all but disappeared. This places owner Jimmy Haslam in an impossible situation. His public support for Sanders Sanders has been well documented. His frustration with the coaching staff's decisions is barely concealed. Yet firing a head coach mid-season creates even more instability, serves as a public admission of organizational failure, and resets the entire competitive timeline indefinitely. Sources claim Haslam was privately furious following Sunday's viewership disaster. One executive familiar with the owner's mindset stated, "Jimmy isn't just upset about losing, he's deeply concerned about the franchise's value, the shattered fan engagement, and his relationships around the league. This situation is affecting everything he cares about." The front office, led by general manager Andrew Barry, is navigating treacherous waters. Barry's reputation was built on sharp analytical decision-making and savvy talent evaluation. The benching of Sanders, his prized draft pick, completely undermines his strategy. It calls his quarterback assessment into question and reveals a fundamental disconnect between the personnel decisions being made and the coaching implementation on the field. Sources suggest Barry has been advocating strongly behind the scenes for Sanders' return, presenting data that supports the change, emphasizing the competitive advantages, and highlighting the crucial developmental considerations. His recommendations, however, have reportedly been ignored, creating a dangerous organizational friction that is intensifying by the day. But let's bring it all back to the fans, because their response is the engine driving this entire crisis. Cleveland supporters have endured an almost unimaginable level of quarterback disappointment over decades. They have witnessed a parade of draft busts, free agency disasters, and developmental failures. Shedeur Sanders represented something different. He represented hope. He represented excitement. He represented the genuine possibility of a true franchise quarterback. His benching feels like the ultimate betrayal, a textbook case of organizational incompetence repeating itself predictably. It is another golden opportunity being needlessly squandered. Their frustration is legitimate, their anger is justified, and their abandonment of the team is completely understandable. Social media campaigns are organizing with stunning speed. Fan groups are coordinating future viewing boycotts, attendance protests, and even merchandise returns. One organizer explained their movement's purpose: "We are not abandoning the Browns. We are demanding accountability. We want competent leadership and respect for the fans' intelligence." Playing an inferior quarterback while benching a generational talent represents a level of organizational disrespect that we will no longer tolerate. Another activist stated, "Our wallets will speak louder than our words. When attendance drops, when merchandise sales decline, and when viewership craters, that is when ownership will finally be forced to pay attention." Finally, the national media coverage is intensifying dramatically, turning the Browns into a league-wide cautionary tale. Major sports networks are dedicating entire programming blocks to analyzing Cleveland's dysfunction. Podcasts are exploring the organizational failure from every conceivable angle. The Browns have become a case study in what happens when personnel decisions directly conflict with business realities. Former players are weighing in universally, with retired quarterbacks questioning Stefanski's stubbornness and legendary coaches suggesting that an organizational intervention is necessary. One former Super Bowl winning coach stated during a television appearance, "Kevin is coaching himself out of a job." When you are losing games and losing viewers simultaneously, your runway disappears very, very quickly. Do not assume for a moment that an easy resolution will emerge. Multiple scenarios exist, and none of them represent an ideal outcome. In scenario 1, Stefanski relents under pressure, starts Sanders next week, and attempts to salvage a season already scarred by irreparable damage. The question is the locker room salvageable? In scenario 2, ownership intervenes directly, mandates the quarterback change, and permanently undermines the coaching staff's authority, creating a lame duck coach for the rest of the season. In scenario 3, the Browns stubbornly maintain their current course, accepting the continued viewership decline, competitive struggles, and organizational chaos as their new reality, effectively punting on the entire season. Each path forward presents significant franchise-altering complications. This disaster was entirely 100% preventable. The formula is simple: play your best quarterback, maximize your competitive advantage, generate excitement among your fan base, and maintain viewership engagement. Instead, Cleveland chose organizational stubbornness over common sense, competitive logic, and basic business realities. The consequences were predictable, yet they are somehow still shocking shocking in their sheer severity. The Browns entered this season with dreams of playoff contention and defensive dominance. Instead, they are the epicenter of a conversation about viewership craters, coaching hot seats, and organizational implosion, all because they refuse to play the one quarterback that everyone in the world wants to watch. This isn't just a bad football decision. This is a catastrophic failure of leadership, and it demands immediate intervention before the entire franchise burns to the ground. What do you think is truly going on in Cleveland? Is Kevin Stefanski the most stubborn coach in the NFL? Or is there something else at play here? A power struggle between the front office and the coaching staff? And what should the league do about a team that is actively damaging its own product? Let me know your explosive takes down in the comments below. And if you want to stay on top of this unfolding catastrophe, make sure you smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss a single update.